Okay, so I'm going to talk about a 25-minute presentation. I hope that's okay. How the pandemic has affected our mental health and how we can better support ourselves and those that we love. Okay, so for a minute, this is an exercise to start with. If anyone's got a pen and paper beside them, that would be the most useful for the exercise. And if you don't, that's okay, but try to close your eyes or shut off any distraction, just to think for a minute what you've done for yourself in the last couple of months for your maintenance of your physical health. So just think for a minute. I'm going to think too, what you've done for maintenance of your physical health or improvement, anything towards your physical health. Okay, next one, I'd like you to think in the last couple of months what you've done. Oh, I've got somebody put something in the chat. Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. Right, what you've done for your mental health. Now, I'll put a caveat in here. I only let you write down physical health activities, such as running, if you actually had the intention at the time to do it for your mental health. Not now you're thinking about it, that was good for my mental health. Oh, somebody's not on mute. If you could just mute yourself. Okay. Was anybody's mental health list as long as their physical health list, or longer, or a lot shorter? That's going to have to be a rhetorical question because I can't see everybody, which is a shame. Can't do everything. Okay, so that's a rhetorical question. Okay, so the pandemic has taken its toll on millions of people's mental health across the globe, as we could probably guess. However, one of the most talked about sectors of society amongst mental health professionals has actually been the 60+ age group. Now, you might be thinking that this is because the COVID deaths and serious illnesses have been more for this population than any other age population. So understandably, there might be more fear and because of not going, and maybe more loneliness because of not going out. However, actually, other age populations have also suffered considerably from COVID in other ways, such as redundancies, bereavement, domestic abuse has been incredibly high, suicide rate has been very high also, relationship stress, parenting, work balance, school and friendship disruption of the teenage. So interestingly, one of the main arguments for the 60+ age group finding itself in the limelight during the pandemic is actually because of what I've got on the slide here, that actually higher levels, that there was a large survey done quite some time ago that was over an expanse of 10 years and of the 60+ age group, and actually they reported higher levels of general well-being and life satisfaction and emotional stability than under 60+ years, and that actually well-being increases as we get older. However, sadly, this has considerably changed after the last 2 years, and that might be one argument as to why now this age group is much more in the limelight than ever before. So a recent survey, over 14,000, a sample of 40,000 people, 65+ age group, was conducted by Age UK on the impact of the pandemic on mental health. And it showed that many people in this category are experiencing anxiety, depression, and agoraphobia. Agoraphobia being afraid to go out for the first time ever in their lives. And rates of depression for this age group have now doubled, which is quite considerable. However, Tom Gentry, who is the Senior Manager for Health and Care Policy at Age UK, he reported in the October edition of CBT Today, which is a little magazine that I read, that people over the age of 65 are actually just as likely to be living with a common mental health condition, such as anxiety and depression, as any other people, even pre-COVID. But the likelihood of them accessing support and seeking out support is significantly lower than any other age category, with actually less than 6% of referrals to the NHS IAPT mental health services coming from people over 65. IAPT is the GP, it's the talking therapies for the NHS. Somebody's raised their hand. Shirley, do you have a question? If you want to unmute yourself, Shirley, if you've got a question. No? Okay. And yeah, so less than 6% referrals coming in from people over 65. So although the pandemic has actually definitely increased mental health issues amongst this age group, it's actually shone a very, very important light on a sector of society that actually may have been suffering potentially more than we originally thought from common mental health issues, but actually seeking out mental health support much less than any other age group. And actually, if there's any silver lining to this pandemic, that actually now the services, the mental health support services from the NHS are now really getting quite concerned that they haven't been reaching out to the 60+ age group as well as they should have been. Now, they're also saying that the reason why, and the research has brought out reasons why this age group might not seek out support as much as other age groups. So I can actually vouch for this research. So I worked out the other day that I've treated about 150 clients in the last 7 years. And I've been working as a CBT psychotherapist, accredited, for about 7 years. I've worked in Mind in Stevenage. I've worked in Birka Choilim IAPT in Stamford Hill. I've had private practice for over 2 years. I've only had 2 referrals ever over the age of 60. And that's really saying something, because I've also had a lot of referrals that I couldn't take on because I was full. So Age UK researched why this might have been, and they found that people over the age of 60, 65 were more likely to have some interesting reasons and unhelpful reasons as to why they wouldn't access therapy. And these were some of those that they wrote down themselves. So reasons such as mental health issues are just a normal part of aging, aren't they? I'm too old to change now. I don't want to cause a fuss. It's not severe enough to seek help. I once had counselling, it didn't really help, so I wouldn't do it again. And I can make do with what I have. And interestingly, that last one, I can make do with what I have, is actually something that we see a lot in a kind of post-war generation. Parents had that value through the war. It's what got them through. It's a very good value, but when it comes to mental health, it doesn't really work. It more hinders. So IAPT therapy statistics for this age group consistently show these unhelpful reasons, but they are just that. And actually, anyone that has come into therapy for support for over 60 is just as likely to recover from mental health conditions following therapy as any other age group. So what questions arise from this, and what messages can we take from this? So the three main important questions I think arise from this are the following. So how do I know if I or someone close to me could actually benefit from some mental health support? What types of mental health support are available? And what can get in the way of us looking for support? So first of all, how do I know if I or someone close to me could actually benefit from some mental health support? So everybody is on the mental health spectrum, everybody. We all have weaknesses, we will never be perfect. And so at what point can we say that this person here could benefit from a little bit of mental health support? So the truth is, in my opinion, we could all do with some self-development workshops, but at what point is it worth investing in sitting on a waiting list and calling the GP every month, am I getting my therapy soon? And that, annoying wait, and there is a long wait sometimes for GP therapy referrals, or, the private therapy fees, or, going searching and trawling through therapists. So the real question is, how much is our mental health affecting our daily lives? Are we avoiding so many things that we used to due to fear that we are, we're no longer enjoying life anymore? Or maybe we're a lot less motivated than we used to be, and therefore we're not getting much done and not feeling as fulfilled as we used to. Or maybe our sleep is really heavily disrupted, much more than it used to be, not just from, aches and pains that might be waking us up. Or are we feeling more frustrated or angry or tense and taking it out on the people around us? Maybe we're worrying a lot more about things that are not in our control, and it's making us feel on edge a lot. Or maybe we're obsessively tidying and cleaning to avoid thinking negative thoughts. Or perhaps we just feel our certain thoughts shouldn't be there. So if your life or your life of a loved one is becoming disrupted a fair bit by mental health, it might be worth getting support, just as you would go to your GP, your dentist, or your optician about a physical part of your body, because that's what the brain is. It's a physical part of body, and that's where the mental health issues are sitting. Okay, so what types of mental health support are available? So we have got various different things for different levels of mental health issues. So anyone can go to their GP and request a bit of help, and the GP will assess you and decide what kind of therapy, mental health therapy you might need, and refer you to what we call the IAP service. But you can actually also Google IAP service and self-refer also. Health insurance providers always have a list. So if you've got health insurance, most health insurances provide almost free counselling for quite some time. The BABCP, which is most mental health can be helped by CBT therapists. I'm part of the BABCP. They have on their website a long list of registered, accredited therapists. Obviously, you have to do your own kind of interviewing for prices and check for rapport, but they're all there. Jamie website has lots and lots and lots of resources, but it also has a free text line that even if you don't want to talk to someone like on the Samaritans on the phone, you can just text back and forward, and it's completely anonymous. Age UK has a befriending line for loneliness. There's also, unbelievable, I use this all the time, this is a self-help. No one even needs to know, in the private of your own home. You can Google CCI self-help workbooks, just plop it in Google, and you can get a whole workbook on loads of different mental health issues. So if you're feeling a bit depressed, if you're worrying, if you have a bit of social anxiety, all you need to do is type in social anxiety and a whole session of therapy comes up, and it's got activities and it's very easy to read, really understandable. It's the best thing that I ever came across in my therapy, and it's all free and no one has to know. I haven't written it here, but YouTube also has lots of things that you can learn from. Just Google in, I'm feeling a bit anxious, and it will come up with some stuff, some that's good, some that's bad, but nevertheless, you're probably likely to take something home from it. Also, the Time to Change website has a lot of brilliant resources, numbers, text lines, all sorts, mostly that are free, that are also really helpful as well. So what can get in the way of us looking for support? One answer and one answer only: us. And those unhelpful reasons at the beginning. There is no problem too small, no problem too large that people cannot reach out. It's embarrassing sometimes to ourselves. Sometimes it can be shameful. Sometimes we just feel like, yeah, but I'm not the type of person to have this. Well, now's the time for you to say, yes, you are, because most of the world has something that they're struggling with, and we can blame it all on COVID if that helps us to seek out or help a loved one seek out some help. So the last section of my presentation, I wanted to leave you with a few helpful CBT strategies to help with low mood and anxiety that might have sent in from the pandemic, or maybe might be helpful to somebody you know. So we could argue that it's not my mental health that's affecting me. It's the restrictions, the blooming restrictions are being placed upon me, and this fear of COVID. I've got no mental health issues. It's just these blooming restrictions. So these thoughts I really understand and appreciate, and I fully respect. However, I would like to draw us to some slightly different perspectives that might be helpful. Generally, what I say to all my clients is what you are thinking or is what you're doing helpful to you? And that's a really good line to always remember. Is the way I'm behaving or the way I'm thinking helpful to me? If it's not, you have the power to change it. You just need to go out and look for the way to help yourself. Okay, I don't know whether it was a commitment, but at the beginning of the pandemic, I started reading a lot of Holocaust novels. And at the moment, I'm reading The Choice by Edith Eger, and I just wanted to pull this out. So Edith Eger was a psychologist. She became a psychologist, but she was an author, but she was also an Auschwitz survivor. And she writes in her book, The Choice: suffering is universal, but victimhood is optional. We are all likely to be victimized in some way in the course of our lives. At some point, we will suffer some kind of affliction, calamity, or abuse. This is victimization. It comes from the outside. In contrast, victimhood comes from the inside. No one can make you a victim but you. We become victims not because of what happens to us, but when we choose to hold on to our victimization. We develop a victim's mind, a way of thinking and being that is rigid, blaming, pessimistic, and we become our own jailers. A very powerful point, and I would recommend everyone to read the book. It's an incredible piece of work. So as with so many Holocaust survivor accounts that I've read, Edith in her book really homes in on some key principles that really I clearly can see how it got her and other survivors through the extreme hell that they were going through, which we can really learn from today. And I make it a point for me to learn from these important lessons. So the first one is that we can get through challenge when we have a life of purpose, meaning, and connection to others. And this was also echoed by Viktor Frankl, who was also a survivor, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, which ended up in his finding of logotherapy, which was literally about adding meaning and purpose to your life. We can also get through challenge when we shift to a perspective of acceptance of what is, surrendering, literally throwing our hands up, stopping the struggle with what we're going through, stopping the blaming, stopping the pushing on the government and Boris Johnson and this and that and the conspiracy theory and everything, and accepting what is accepting that this is really hard, and more moving over to an expression of feeling and pain to ourselves. We don't need to share it with anyone else. We can get out a diary and we can just share the pain and the frustrations and open up, because really that's what's going on inside of us, that we are frustrated, we're angry, we're annoyed, it's about allowing ourselves to express how it's making me feel and surrendering to what is. The challenge is hard enough. We don't need to add on top of it by fighting it. Accept what is. And then we're in a better position actually to ask ourselves, how can I make the best of this hard situation? So interestingly enough, this is actually the exact treatment, and it came after these wonderful, incredible survivors had gone through the hell that they went through, with Aaron Beck, who actually died recently, the founder of CBT. And we used to heal people with depression this actual method. It's called behavioral activation, and it's used by all CBT therapists for tackling low mood. So low moods can set in when we stop or we heavily reduce activities that make us feel fulfilled or purposeful or proud of ourselves. And it can set in when we're connecting a lot less to other people. So when we're doing a lot less fun things than we used to, it can be triggered by lots of different things. It can be triggered by physical injuries, where we end up we're having to be on bed rest for weeks on end. It can be triggered by job loss, where I'm not feeling fulfilled anymore, bereavement, relationship disruption, many other things. So obviously the pandemic has affected our lives a lot in this way, because it's affecting the way we connect to others, the way perhaps what we're doing, how many of the activities we are still able to do. So in therapy, we would do this thing called behavioral activation, and you can look at this diagram here of what behavioral activation is. So in therapy, we would drill out a list of activities that we used to do, or we used to like doing, or goals that we used to have that were never actually fulfilled. And we can put them under three headings: connecting to others, fun, relaxing activities, and fulfilling activities. So fulfilling activities are things that might require a bit of effort, and it's a bit hard in the process, but I do actually feel really proud of myself after. So we would think how we can introduce something from each one of these areas back into our life in some way, and a little bit every day. And we might need to think quite creatively to do this. We might need to surf the web a bit. We might need to brainstorm with some creative people we know. And it might not just come straight away, but it's all out there. So this all sounds very easy. Just drill out a load of activities on a sheet of paper. I could have done that ages ago. So what's the catch? The hardest part of this treatment is the voice of lethargy. So when we're feeling low, and this is the real key to this, we actually produce hormones that make us feel really lethargic and heavy, makes us feel tired. We actually really feel physically tired when we have low mood. And it's therefore really common to think, oh, I just can't be bothered. Or I'm just not in the right mindset. I'm not in the right frame of mind right now. I'll just wait until I feel like it. But it rarely ever comes. It won't really come. There will never be a proper time for that. So the more you don't do the things that make you feel good, the more that your mind is a fertile ground for negative thinking. And that's what this little diagram here shows you. And when you have low mood and you can't be bothered, so you don't do it and you don't do anything, and the negative thinking gets worse and that makes the low mood get worse, and it just goes round and round and round and round. And it will just keep going like that. So we need to be brave, and we need to break the cycle, and we need to trust in what I'm saying now, And we need to either tell ourselves or those that we know might be struggling with this, that we have to ignore that voice of I can't be bothered. And we need to just do a weeny little push, not a big one. We need to do a few experiments. So I tell my clients, just do a few experiments this week, just for 10 minutes to start with. When you hear the voice of lethargy, I can't be bothered, ignore it and push yourself to do one of those activities on your list just for 10 minutes. Get the timer out. Don't go over the timer. Keep to it, because you won't trust yourselves in the future if you burn out doing it for an hour. And just start small and build on this daily, because the interesting thing is, and this is key, that the activities that you've just written down on your list of connection to others and fulfilling activities and all of these things, exercise, which produces endorphins, which is one of the greatest releases of, helping you feel good. These hormones are energy-giving hormones. They produce energy-giving hormones, which make us feel a bit more chipper and make us feel a bit more motivated. So we actually feel physically like we got more energy, and we feel physically less tired, and that we actually want to go and do some more tomorrow. And we're left feeling with that memory, but we're also left feeling actually a little bit energized to actually do a little bit more. So we need to go and surf the web, look for some really creative new ideas to be fulfilled, relaxed, energized, exercise, and think of ways to connect to people in different ways. We can, we often, when we're low or anxious or worried, we can get really stuck in our own heads. And when we get stuck in our own heads, we really need to start thinking we've got to focus outward. And that's great when we focus on someone else, pick up the phone, ask them how they're doing. It's really easy just to kind of tell, oh, this is not good for me. Forget about you, just have a go at asking them questions, maybe thinking how to surprise them and trying to plan how you could give to them. Because actually it's a natural, comfortable tendency to want to think about our problems, but actually it will make us feel better if we focus outward. That doesn't mean suppressing. We can focus, we can still be honest with ourselves of that there are times when we feel low, but this is a way of focusing outward and connecting to others can make us feel good and energized. Also, to recognize that some of your plans might fail. That's okay, just choose another one, go for another one, keep surfing, keep looking for things to do, keep springboarding, ask others, research, don't give up. And one last thing for this aspect of the presentation, choose yourself a cheerleader, somebody to tell, someone who can encourage you and say, yeah, brilliant, that's amazing, well done. Oh yeah, or do it together with somebody else. Let's try and energize each other. Like this little chap here, which I think is quite a nice little cartoon, where you have the owner of the dog. He wants to go for a walk. I'm too depressed. I hate you for making me do this. And then they go out for a walk and he feels a lot better. I love you for making me do this. That is exactly, very simply, what it's like. Now, before we end, some final words on anxiety. Only a few more minutes left. So feeling anxious stems from worrying about worst case scenarios that might happen. So the more likely we think a worst case scenario might occur, and the less confidence we have in our ability to manage it if that worst case scenario occurred, the stronger feelings of anxiety. And that's what this little diagram is. And I wasn't saying that slow to be patronizing. It's just the way I've said it, it's an important thing to remember. So if we lack confidence in certain things, and if we feel that something is very, very likely to happen, we're more likely to have stronger levels of anxiety. So the stronger anxiety we have about something we're fearful of happening, the more likely we are to avoid various things that we believe are going to increase the chances of it happening. So in light of the pandemic, the more likely we think we're going to get COVID. And if we believe we wouldn't cope well if we did, the higher our anxiety is likely to be. And therefore, our avoidance is likely to be greater. And that is when we find that our life has become much, much, much smaller, and we're doing a lot less, and we're connecting to a lot less people than we used to. And that's when low mood sets in, which we've just spoken about. So what can we do about the anxiety? So when it comes to what I'm worried about and what I fear, the brain works in like this better safe than sorry mode as this fight and flight system. So anxiety spins off a fight and flight system, which you've probably all heard of, which now creates a whole load of anxiety symptoms in our bodies. And this is a brilliant mechanism if we're trying to run for our lives from something life-threatening, because this fight and flight is made for survival. But most of the time, we're not going to die from what we're fearful of. And yes, we could die from COVID, we do know that, but everything, the fight and flight system is going to set off, and we're going to get all those anxiety symptoms for things that are clearly not life-threatening. So what will actually happen is our brain will want to avoid as many things as possible, just in case the actual thing that I fear might occur. But in actual fact, many of those things we don't need to actually be avoiding as much as we are. So in reference to the pandemic, I would suggest that there are some things to avoid to reduce anxiety. Avoid listening to the news too much. Once a day is enough. Don't do it. It will be the bane of your life. Stop talking about it so much with other people. The more we talk about it, the more our brain actually thinks that the likelihood of it happening has gone up. The more negative stories we allow ourselves to listen to and read will make our brain think the likelihood has just gone up. The more we ruminate and sit in our chair and imagine what happens to us if we got COVID or somebody else had it or whatever, and we embellish that we heard someone died from it and we think about it a lot, our brain will think the likelihood has just gone up. The more we read about what's happening in China and India and over here and there with their infection rates, the more now our brain just thinks the likelihood has gone up. And now the likelihood is so high, I'm not even stepping outside on my doorstep. So the next thing, get your facts and figures straight. Get it from trustworthy sources and watch out for media hype. Media news is there for stories. Interesting stories, stories to grab your attention. I wish they wouldn't tell us that in one supermarket in Liverpool, toilet roll is running out, because now everybody is now going to rush out to get toilet roll, and the media, the news have just created a toilet roll problem. Media hype, be very, very careful of it. Live by what is true. Not allowing your brain to stay in better safe than sorry mode. Now, that doesn't mean go around hugging everyone. It doesn't mean go into a crowded hall or concert. No, it doesn't mean that. But it doesn't mean to stop yourself going to an outdoor market with a mask on, keeping your distance, washing your hands, being triple vaccinated, as the likelihood of it carrying risk is very, very, very small. Now, just before this presentation, I made sure that I read the news to make sure that my facts were right, even though, yes, the news can also be very problematic. And it is still saying that 90% 3 months after being vaccinated 3 times, your booster, you have 90% protection. And of course, there might be the one anomaly person, but actually, The people who are sadly in the hospitals are mostly the people who are not vaccinated, which is a very sad story. And yes, of course, something could happen to us, maybe, possibly. But this brings me on to my very final point. At this stage of the pandemic, we do need to make sure that we're doing a cost-benefit analysis, asking ourselves, am I living a life worth living right now? If the answer is no, not really, or a bit, that doesn't mean take massive risks. But my question is, and it is a question because we all have to ask ourselves, are we perhaps avoiding too much based on a better safe than sorry system of something just might occur? And have we become institutionalized in our own homes, so to speak, and actually developed a fear of what is now unknown to us? What we used to do all the time, mixing with people, going out up the motorway, up north, or, you know, doing things that we used to do, and we've actually become a little bit of an institutionalized brain. What can we do pretty safely to start introducing more enjoyment into our lives? The question is COVID jailing us, or are we now jailing ourselves? So that is stopping sharing, and now opening up for any questions.
Can I make an observation?
Yes.
Right, I wrote 2 things down because I think a lot of what you say is not COVID related at all, but everything related.
Yes.
All right. And I, just as you relate a lot of stuff to the work you do, I relate a lot of what you say to the work that I do. I've got a case, I'm dealing with somebody on Monday who has definitely adopted victimhood. And certainly that quotation that you used is something that I'm going to be using when I speak to him on Monday. Obviously introduce it sensitively, but 2 things occurred to me. And when you said about acceptance, I think it reminded me of that famous serenity prayer about,
amazing,
you know, Lord, help me to accept the things I can't change. And I think that is really important, that if you accept that you cannot change something, the relief that you have in the acceptance of it actually removes any anxiety.
Yes.
Because it's not within your control. And that acceptance is huge. That is a massive step forward. And I think that that is inextricably related to Edith Eger's quote about victimhood, that victimhood is a choice.
Absolutely, yeah. Which is why she's called it the choice, by the way.
Exactly. But I think we also need to recognise that for many people, and I'm thinking people that do feel they are victims of domestic abuse, when they're in it, it's very hard not to feel a victim. Absolutely. Not to feel that it's your fault.
think it's very hard, and actually in terms of therapy, anyone who is going in the middle of domestic abuse, it's actually problematic to not think you're a victim.
Exactly.
Because that actually you have to protect yourself, but more relatable when we're coming out of something.
Yeah. So I think whilst the choice is a very positive and a very assertive way of dealing with it, we still have to remember that it's a journey and it's a dynamic process, and that somebody cannot suddenly switch from victim to survivor.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a process, definitely. And a journey that's, you know, if you start, is an amazing thing in itself to get on the journey.
I'm taking you over to the cooker because I'm doing something. Okay. But and the other thing that I was going to say is that I think it's probably fair to say that there is a lesser propensity to all these negative things when you're part of a community. And that is the benefit, I think, to being part of any community, but also particularly being part of a religious community.
I love it how you're cooking.
I've invited the neighbours in for supper because this is part of my
connecting to others.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, you know, what can I do that's something nice? And I can share, you know, breaking bread with people is something nice, and the company is good for me. You know,
Alyssa, you are doing a Blue Peter moment of here is a behavioural activation that I prepared earlier.
Sorry. Well, they were coming at 6:30, and they're very prompt. So I'm going to leave in a minute.
Don't be sorry.
Thank you so much. It was really good, and I loved your diagrams and things. They're really helpful.
I'll make something available. Maybe
that would be really good.
The recording. When people have got the recording, they can watch it.
Yeah, no, I think that would be good, Sally. The diagrams are really helpful about that vicious cycle of depression. And it is so true. You know, the less you feel like doing something, the less you feel like doing anything.
Yeah, and you're just going to keep going round and round.
You do get into that sort of paralysis mode, and it's horrid.
And normally, unless you know this, it's just something that happens by accident that pulls you out. Like you're forced to go for an appointment somewhere for something, and then actually you end up enjoying going out and talking to a few people when you do.
You know, if someone is really not that motivated and they don't want to talk to other people, or they don't think they want to talk to other people, just going out for a walk by yourself on a sunny day, taking in, noticing the birds singing, the trees swaying, the colours, just doing that is very helpful.
Elisa, I like that you're very, very eloquent because of what you do. But what you're saying is very, very true. I have found that the saviour for me throughout all of this has actually been going out on my walks, walking through fields when the weather's pleasant, walking on the roads, not necessarily talking to people, but just enjoying life outside. Because we've been prisoned, it's been so difficult for everyone to meet socially. It's that social interaction that we need to be able to bounce off other people.
Well, we're social animals, Robert. We're social animals.
Yes, we are social. Yes, right. And when you're in a situation where you can't communicate, it makes it worse. You become more lethargic, more tired. I can't be bothered, therefore I won't do it. And I will sit there and go to sleep. But by interacting with others, that's a help, as you say, the community. And the community, I can't think of the word I'm thinking of. Anyway, within a community, whether it's a Jewish community or others, means to say that you interact with other people and you talk to other people. And the problem is we don't talk. We don't communicate with anybody. This is people generally, we keep it within ourselves. And the more you keep it within yourself, the worse it is. So the more you communicate and bounce off of somebody else, the better it is.
A problem shared is a problem whole.
Precisely, but people don't listen to that. And they tend to go in. I like the fact, Alison, you said at the very beginning, that us oldies don't tend to communicate with other people and don't I can't think of the words. And it's my problem. I'm not terribly eloquent, and I say the wrong things in the wrong order, or the right things in the wrong order. But that's all part and parcel, because the more you do that, the better it is, and the more it helps other people. And they turn around and say, oh, Achanabi, he's got a problem. And that takes the problem away from them and just puts it out in the sky. Oh, sorry, I haven't got any water here either. I mean, I'm going to shut up.
Are there any questions from anybody?
There's not a question, but I found your presentation very illuminating, actually. And I did write down quite a lot of things, because we happen to be in the position, as you know, that we're living north, we're away from the family. We haven't had that social interaction. We're being very careful. But I found that if I try to achieve something every day, it's good. I play Scrabble online, which is good.
Oh,
I've
I don't
written
know
it all
anyone
down.
who does that.
I think I know a few people. I've discovered, I have done artwork, so I've discovered having these fantastic, and this might be for everybody because it's lovely to do. Colouring in for adults has been brilliant because I sit and colour fantastic pictures. It's all in black and white, and I've tried to find something that I can do that's an achievement in my day. Besides, yes, we're lucky because we've got a canal here, so we go walking. My husband does running, and but as you said, Robert, it's the social activities that we all, perhaps besides Shaw, took part of before, that has been quite a handicap. And I really feel that your presentation and how you put it should get out there for other people to see, because I've written down all the things that you stated on the other side. I didn't know about some of the services. I did have a problem myself. I was very fortunate, particularly in this area, because I did seek help. And I did get, within a few weeks, they had a contact with me who went through questions, which was fantastic, who then had to sort, this is the only thing, they had to source the equivalent. I went to the GP first, had to source an equivalent person that had to deal with why I was feeling so anxious, who then put me through to somebody else. It was a bit of a performance, but I got there in the end.
Well, well done for doing it.
Yeah, but a lot is to do with us. So all our social life has been put on hold. That's it. That's the difficulty.
It is a great difficulty. And it was interesting because in the crux of the pandemic, in, you know, the lockdowns where we were really locked down, one night I spent into the early hours of the morning devising a plan which I thought was going to be nationally viral. I had this whole dream in my head. I sat there for hours and hours.
I'm really sorry, got to go.
Bye,
Bye.
Bye. Hours and hours and end of trying to think how to get certain messages to help people's mental health out there in the easiest way for everyone to remember and see. It flopped. I can't remember why. I just thought this is not going to happen. I don't know what happened, but it was interesting that certainly, I mean, there has been a lot of good that's come out of it in terms of mental health. And I mean, as I said at the beginning, the light is being shone now, especially on the people who are over 60. But I think that in terms of social contact, that's where I was saying the better safe than sorry. Now it's everybody's got to make a judgment call for themselves, and we have to continuously look at the facts and figures. We also have to look at our own health, but there's still ways of being social, and sometimes we can put ourselves in a rut. It's definitely not the same being on Zoom with people. It's much nicer all being around in a house and walking about together. And the question is, when we're going to, it's hard. Living with uncertainty is hard, because it's almost as if, at what time when am I going to put my hands up and say, you know what, stuff it, I'm just going to do what I want to do. I don't care about any risk now, I'm just going to do it. Now, the brain is going to find it very hard to do that because it's a survival mechanism. But we don't know, I guess, the uncertainty of how long a pandemic will go on for. Will it be going on for another 2 months? And it will show that whatever variants come out now doesn't matter, because it's basically just like a glorified cold, which in that case, brilliant. Or could it go on for years, decades? So the question we have to ask ourselves, I think, is at what point are we going to say to ourselves, stuff it, I'm going to do whatever I want to do socially now, and that's it, finished? At what point am I going to, because I think that that's the most important point really in terms of socially, is to ask ourselves, what am I waiting for? What sign or signal or statistic am I waiting for before I get back on the road and just get involved with all the social that I want to be doing? I think that that's a really important question to ask ourselves, because otherwise we can actually almost become habit, and we can become institutionalized.
Yeah, antisocial.
We can get used to it. We can get used to it, and we can become
lose our confidence.
Yeah, it's like people who've been in prison who actually do something really, really bad to get back into prison again because they don't know how to be social anymore.
Right.
But I agree with Georgina. Zoom has been a saving grace.
Georgina, did Georgina say something in the chat?
She said that she thinks Zoom personally was good for her, and I agree with that. I haven't missed the social interaction because I've had it on Zoom. Everything that I did in person has now been on Zoom.
Right.
The other point I wanted to make, or question I wanted to ask you, Ali, was the fact that doesn't your attitude or your response vary according to your own personality? People are divided into the glass half empty and the glass half full. And if they're of the glass half full, if they have the glass half full attitude, all the things that you've suggested will be taking place anyway. If they're the glass half empty, can you change it with these?
Yes, go on to the CCI workbooks under depression, because it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody is depressed if I say that, but somebody who's got a glass half empty kind of way of looking for whatever reason, their upbringing or various things that happen to them in their lives, more in the younger age, when they were younger, and it just kind of built up over time, whatever you want to call it, nature, nurture. There are some things on the depression CCI workbook, which is to do with negative thinking.
What's CCI? What's CCI?
So CCI, it's a website. I can't remember. It's like cci.org.au. It's an Australian website that is free to access. And if you put in Google CCI self-help workbooks, you get a whole list of different, like, social anxiety workbook, health anxiety, worrying, self-esteem, depression, what have you. Now, in one of those, it's got about how to tackle negative thinking. And negative thinking over time. So our brains, they used to think, are wired and that's it. They're wired the way they're wired. But over the last 20 years, they found neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity basically means that, yes, your brain is wired in a certain way due to your experiences, the way some DNA aspects, the way people spoke to you as you were growing up, your experiences when you were teens. Those were the times where your neural networks mostly formed. But actually, neuroplasticity tells us that basically if you repeat the same new behavior or the same new way of talking to yourself over and over again, and the Torah also talks about this as well, they say 40 times is enough, that actually if you repeat it over and over and over, this new way of behaving, you change the neural network arrangement in your brain to form a new habit. So our brains are actually much more changeable, which is why the evidence for recovery rates amongst people who are older are exactly the same as people who are younger. It's not a leopard can't change his spots anymore. A leopard can change his spots with effort and work. So you can change your negative thinking once you catch your negative thinking, which is the first step. And then you start changing it. And in one of those workbooks in depression or low mood, it talks about working with negative thinking, and it's a brilliant workbook. It's really worthwhile looking at that. But yes, we can train ourselves to think more positively. Not so hard. Takes practice, that's all. It does take practice. Any other questions? Or
Yeah.
David's got a question.
Yes, my doctor told me I was in the clinically extremely vulnerable group, so I shielded. And it's odd, you know, that at one time I really enjoyed traveling. Now I can't face it. I really need to go to America to sort out various business matters. And I can't face even booking a trip there. I say I'm going to do it and I just can't, because now it's been made so unpleasant. And in my mind, I've always got this thing that I am a super high risk for COVID, whereas I don't know. That
Right.
Because of my age and this leukemia diagnosis. So
yeah, sure. And it's really understandable why you'd be so fearful. The question is, where do you want to be the most? Do you want to be the way you're living right now? Or do you want to take the risks and go abroad? And what are those risks? And are they actually that risky for you or not? And you can talk to a doctor about your condition and looking at the risks. You need to look at the facts and figures in America. But if, it's just the PCR tests and the quarantine and this and that and whatever are a bit annoying, then it probably is perhaps more worth thinking about whether, maybe it's better to go if the benefits of actually going outweigh what you're doing now in your life. And this is where we talk about a cost-benefit analysis. Is my life right now worth living? And if not, how am I going to improve it?
Well, it's other areas. I used to go to the gym, but I've stopped going because of this, because I see that I see it's young people are the ones who are catching COVID. So I don't go anymore. And
so then the question is, did you go to the gym for social, or did you go for it to work out, or a bit of both? So if you went to social, right, so if it was to go to the gym to work out, there are plenty of gyms in the parks, and they're pretty safe to go to a gym in a park. There's one in Verulamium, and you could go there. And if it was to do with social, then it's about perhaps thinking about how I might be able to access something socially in another sort of way that I feel more comfortable with. But that's kind of where we think how we need to be creative to open up our brains and bounce soundboard off of other people, where I don't need to completely ditch in my workouts. I just need to find a better way of working out.
Well, it's the main thing is what I fear is crowded planes. That you see, before in the pandemic when I travelled, because there's so many obstructions, the planes were empty. But now I don't mind having to do the multiple tests and the quarantine, because I've set things up that I can easily do it. And I'm on my own. It doesn't. I know I'm going to pay about 3 times as much to go and visit my brother as I would have done pre-pandemic. I'm resigned to that.
Right.
And it's being in a crowded plane for 10 hours. It's in fact, I used to really enjoy traveling. Now you couldn't get me anywhere near an airport.
Right.
It's a combination of things. It's not only the testing and having to wear masks on a long flight, which is uncomfortable. And
yeah.
It's the airport security, which is very much a what if they could reduce that.
Yeah.
And it's particularly in America.
So hopefully, as it was within this pandemic, there will be a dip after this Omicron, and things will calm down again, and hopefully you'll be able to go back again.
Well, I have to now, because
yeah,
I've got certain business there that it's become urgent that I have to take care of it, and so I think I'll just have to bite the bullet and go next month.
Get motivated.
Any other questions before we finish up? Because I don't want to keep anybody. I definitely hear your concerns though, David. Any more questions before we finish up?
Just to say thank you, Ali. That was very enlightening. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. I'm really pleased.
Thank you.
Nice to see you as well, Shirley.
And it helped because I've got a family member who phones me all the time because she's
good.
Everything you've told us about, she is very bad state.
Oh.
And you could have been describing her to a T. So I just hope she can get motivated to come out of it. But there's, some people have got nothing to be motivated for. She hasn't got grandchildren. She's not got a family near her, except a son who's not really bothered. And it's very difficult. No social, so no social friends, nothing. And it's very difficult. And she's just like your little circle, everything just goes round in a circle, can't be bothered, not motivated. And it must be so sad. And I feel so sorry for her, really. So there we are. It was very interesting and very enlightening, Ali. I really enjoyed it.
I'll ask Daniel to see if he can try and get the recording and put it on the support group, because I know there was other people who wanted to access it. Just a very minute offer on that, Shirley. Try and get her to give to you. Try and manipulate it in some sort of way where you're able to do stuff with each other, where she can give to you, and that you really kind of almost like, wow, that was amazing, thanks so much. Like maybe ask for her service in some sort of way, like she's a great baker. Maybe
that's another thing, you see. If she could go and bake a cake, that's what I do when I've got nothing on my mind. I'll go and bake a nice cake, put it in the freezer.
Right, give it time.
Yeah, but she won't do that. Oh, can't be bothered. She can't be bothered to cook properly for herself. Can't be bothered.
Right.
She's.
It sounds like she could do with a little bit more support than you can offer.
She's having counselling. Goes, one of those people, it's not doing anything, and medication. Oh, very negative. That's what it is. Very
negative.
I'll let you go, and please God, see you in shore one of these days.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah.
Well, surely the best thing you can do is do what you're doing, is supporting it.
Yeah, that's all I can do. Try and make her laugh and jolly her along and all that. So that's all.
Shirley, try and tell her counselling doesn't really work. Tell her to go for CBT, because CBT is what she should be getting for depression.
CBT, she said. Yeah, I don't think they can, but that's what she tells me.
She should go for CBT, and her GP can offer it. Or if she's on health insurance, then she can get CBT, about 12 sessions at least, covered by health insurance. Some do more. And that would be a lot better for her, and she will see movement, hopefully.
Yeah.
But it definitely sounds like her things are limited.
Yeah, very.
They have to be creative. But there are things out there. Her counsellor told her it's all due to bereavement, because she lost her husband a couple of years ago, same time as I lost Phil. Yeah. And it's all to do with bereavement. Well, it's the trigger probably, but it's not the end. No. Yeah. Anyway, Ali, lovely to talk to you. Really lovely to see you. Lovely enjoyed it. Bye, everybody. Bye, Shirley. Happy and healthy New Year to you all. Let's all be well. Amen.
Thank you. Ali, thank you very much indeed. We're going to make a move now anyway as well. But Shabbat off to everyone. And thank you again, Ali.
Thank you, Ali.
Bye all.